Hi folks, welcome to the Doctor Who Show. I'm your host, Nick Cicero. Our guest today is Dr. Peter DeNoble. Dr. DeNoble is an orthopedic surgeon in Wayne, New Jersey. He is a hand-to-shoulder specialist who is fellowship trained. Dr. DeNoble also founded the Doctor-Patient Alliance, which helps patients and doctors learn how to navigate the ever-changing insurance industry. Please welcome Dr. Peter DeNoble. Dr. DeNoble, thank you for joining us today. So let's talk about a little bit about where you grew up.
So I grew up outside of Boston in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
My family, ironically, my mother and my father both grew up in New Jersey. My dad was born and raised in Jersey City. Right. My mom actually was born in Cedar Grove,
Okay.
or at Mountainside Hospital. And so she ended up growing up in Jersey, in South Jersey. And then they moved up to Boston. That's where I grew up, and now I'm back, kind of completing the circle.
What made you move up there?
Schooling for my mom, and my dad found a job up there. So, it was a great place to grow up.
Yeah.
I'm still a big sports fan. Sorry, everyone here in Jersey. It is what it is.
So, so did you always want to be a doctor growing up?
I think the idea of being a doctor came out of a variety of my interests. First and foremost, science just kind of clicked with me. A lot of questions about, different aspects of the world and
Right.
and how things worked. And so when I had some of my own actually some orthopedic issues when I was in high school, the idea dawned on me, like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I had some knee issues playing basketball, and so I started to think about it. The seed was sort of planted, and I kind of started to investigate a little bit more about career paths at that point, and got some more exposure. I had some opportunities growing up in high school to sort of go into some hospital settings and see what the healthcare industry was like, and it clicked with me.
When you say opportunities, did you have like a mentor or the doctor that took a look at you? Did somebody like spark it in you?
Yeah, I think there were definitely some really great influencers in my life. One of whom was my physiology teacher in high school, who really kind of made it really fun to learn about the human body, physiology, and from there it kind of just kept going. And that was my senior year of high school. So then I became pre-med. It started obviously getting a lot more intense.
Right.
But I think that's where if you have the idea but you're not quite into it, you kind of just decide it's not for me. I just I had that moment of time where I wasn't sure, but then when I kind of turned around, I realized no, I gotta follow this path. It's for me. So that's kind of what happened, and then I just doubled down and really put my head down and made it a career.
And where did you do your undergrad at?
I went to Emory in Atlanta.
Okay. Yeah. You wanted the warm weather?
Yeah, the warm weather. The warm weather.
Boston for a little bit, Massachusetts for a little bit.
That was part of it, for sure. Not a relatively short drive to Florida or Savannah. So
it makes a big difference.
It was fun.
Those Massachusetts winters. I mean, New Jersey is kind of the same, but depending on where you are up there, this can get bad.
It's cold, and it was even colder than it is nowadays. But Atlanta was fun.
And then where'd you go to medical school?
I went back to Massachusetts, to UMass.
Okay.
Did medical school there.
Yeah.
Met my wife.
Wow.
We couples matched. We ended up down in New York City for our training, for our residency training.
Yeah, okay.
She's a gynecologist.
Yeah.
And then from there, here I am in Jersey, and we've been here. My wife and I have been here for 8 years.
So you met during medical school?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
Were you like on the same rotation, or were you going through?
We met like the first day of medical school.
Get out of here.
But it was one of those things. I remember just kind of locking eyes with her at one point, being like, "That's cute."
First day of medical school, you're like, you know what? I'm not thinking about being a doctor right now. I'm like, she's really cute.
Yeah, that kind of happened, and then that later, a couple days later, there was like the first party that all the first years go to, and we, kind of hit it off. But then things kind of went, on the back burner for a while.
Sure, because you had to study.
We had to study a little bit.
Classes.
But then our second year, we kind of got a little more serious, and actually from then we actually were really good friends
Yeah.
before we were even dating. We realized that we were really like studying together, and so it was really a good match. Not only did we like each other, but we were really good together with respect to all the studying that we had to do.
I gotta say, if you go through medical school and you have a friend or girlfriend, right? And you guys weren't dating in the beginning,
Yeah.
and you do all the study and stuff, and then you're like, well, let's go on a date, and then you make it.
It was interesting, like, you know, it was really a really good friendship. In fact, I was actually dating another girl at one point. But then I'd come home and I'd call her up and be like, I'd be more interested in talking to her. And at some point, it was just like, well, what is all this silliness? Like,
right.
So it was really a really good match. But one of our first, like, it was a date, but I wasn't sure I wanted to declare it a date, and we went and saw that movie Barbershop.
Okay.
I don't even remember that movie. Yeah. And we went to the movies, and at one point I turned to her and I said, like, this isn't a date, right? And she remembers. She still tells that story to me. But it was a date. I mean, come on. Who are we kidding? So,
for you future guys out there, don't ask if it's a date.
It was totally a bad move. It was a total bad move. But that's how good our relationship is. It weathered that bad move.
Well, that was my point.
It stress tested the relationship very early on.
Yeah. Most people are like, we're dating 2 years, let's get married, and then all the stress hits. You got rid of this. Yeah. You went through all the stress tests.
We were there. We were basically with each other like 24/7 for an entire year.
Wow.
So we kind of went through, like, it wasn't off and on long distance. It was like high intensity, like studying, etc.
Yeah.
So anyway, then third and fourth year, and then we were just dating at that point, and we were, the way it works as residents or as medical students is that you match. You go through this thing called the match, and you basically make a list of all where you want to go for your residency. You interview kind of like you would for any college, but it's a more orderly process so that there isn't like, you just basically find out one day on a piece of paper where you matched. There's also a thing called the couples match. So since we were dating and we were serious, we didn't want to end up like one of us in California and one of us in Massachusetts. We wanted to be together. So the option then is to do a couples match where you're basically matching combinations.
Okay.
So we could kind of rank order combinations of places to go. But part of the prerequisite to that was that we were more than just dating. Okay. There was that sort of threshold beyond which I had to go past. And she's like, I'm not couples matching with you, unless we're serious, like, meaning we're engaged.
Wow.
so it kind of like put the...
Oh, wow.
She
put her foot down.
She was like no joke. She did everything the right way.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was a no-brainer.
So I gotta ask, how'd you do it?
Well, actually, we went to New York City, ironically enough, after all that, right? So here we are. But we took a trip to New York City, and I took her to see, at the time, like, it was the Producers was a big show.
Oh yeah.
So we stayed at the Dream Hotel down in Midtown.
Yep.
And it was
great
2 nights.
Hotel.
Yeah, great hotel.
Yeah.
And I wanted to surprise her with something.
Yeah.
And so we were sitting in the morning, and I went to the set. I have something I want to give you, and I rolled over, and I said, "Producers tickets," and she thought that it was going to be a ring, and I doubled.
I thought it was going to be a ring.
No, Producers tickets, and you can tell, like, she's like, "Oh, okay," and so then we went through the rest of the day. It was for that evening, and then right as she was getting ready, I knew she would ask me, how do you think I look in this dress? So right on cue, she goes, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I really love the dress, but I think it would look a lot better with this." And so then because I knew she knew that it was coming at some point, but I had to give her the misdirect. So it worked out really well. She was totally surprised, and I guess so. The rest is history.
So what made you finally choose surgery as which direction? An orthopedic surgeon. That's the direction you wanted to go.
Yeah, so I really, not only, like, medicine's a broad discipline, and there's all these different options. You can go into medicine, you can go into oncology, you can go all these different realms of things that you can specialize in.
Yeah.
Orthopedics is a much more sort of concrete, visual, spatial, structural kind of discipline that allows you to really work with your hands and kind of like see things in front of your face and kind of figure out how to put things back together. It's kind of like putting puzzles back together sometimes. And it just appealed to me. I actually had some interest in, some of my other interests and hobbies growing up were things like art, architecture, design, just seeing how things work together. And that was sort of a way I could kind of take some of those interests and apply it to medicine and how that works. And then the hand stuff, which with the hand surgery, that's just a great sort of nexus for all those interests, because it takes there's a lot of intricate detail, a lot of intricate anatomy that you have to be mindful of and careful with.
There's a lot of small things going on in that hand, right?
There is.
Yeah. So when you decided you went through your rotation, you went through your orthopedic rotation, then you decided you wanted to do a fellowship in hand. Where'd you go for that?
So I did my training in the Bronx for orthopedic residency.
Yeah.
Got a lot of experience, trauma, and all the other aspects to orthopedics. And then to get my extra training, it was at Roosevelt Hospital in New York City, which was at the time the oldest hand fellowship in the country. Very prestigious, and so I was very lucky and humbled to be part of that. Had some great mentors, Steve Glickle, Alton Barron, Catalano, and I learned a ton, not only in the hand, but all the way up to the shoulder. It's a unique program in the sense that they offer that extra training not only in the hand, but also in the elbow and the shoulder. So that made me sort of gave me that boost to really offer that in my practice, and I've taken that baton and run with it. I think well with my practice now.
Okay. For the patients out there, for you patients out there who don't know what a fellowship is, can you just explain to them what a fellowship is and what separates that from someone who doesn't do a fellowship?
So, a fellowship is an additional year of training. Basically, we talked about the breadth of medicine, but even orthopedics alone, there's an entire spectrum of specialties.
Right.
Whether it is large joint replacements, musculoskeletal tumor specialists, sports medicine doctors, shoulder and elbow specialists, foot and ankle specialists, trauma specialists. So there's a lot of specialty work in each area of orthopedics. Hand surgery is its own specialty, and obviously, the importance of the hand and the like gives it, you need that added year to really refine any experience you may have gotten in your prior broad orthopedic exposure. And so, for that year, you just double down and just let the information just pour in. At that time, fortunately, we didn't have kids, so it was really an opportunity to really just focus on just every day and every week, just chapter experience. Like there was just nonstop information, and that's what fellowships are designed to do, is just pack you with information and skills to just really launch you into a really successful career.
Yeah, I always tell family members when they ask me, you're in this realm, so they'll ask you questions, and I tell them, listen, what is it? Is it your hand? Okay, then go to a orthopedic hand specialist.
Right.
Go to somebody who does this on a regular routine, whatever that body part is. It's ailing you, go to the person that deals with that.
Right, who does it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way.
That's important, and it's also important, especially for hand. There's a few disciplines within orthopedics where there's actually an added board qualification, and that's also something for patients to look for. If they have a hand problem or a hand condition, to look for someone who's not only orthopedically board certified, but also has an added qualification in hand surgery.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah,
that's definitely good to know. What are the day in, day out surgeries you do routinely?
Yeah, so I think carpal tunnel is obviously one of the big things that a lot of people have, and in my hands, it's a very simple and safe procedure that has limited, if any, downtime. I often can do it under something called Volant or wide awake, local and no tourniquet. So basically, we just numb your hand up.
No anesthesia.
No anesthesia.
Wow.
You're wide awake. We can have a conversation for the 10 minutes it takes to do the procedure, and it's right away you're using your hand that day.
Wow.
And a lot of people go back to work the next day or so. So it's bandage on your hand for a few days, but otherwise you can use your hand for anything you want. So that's one of the common procedures I do, and I do it through a technique called endoscopic carpal tunnel release. And it's just a little bit smaller of an incision. It offsets. It's a little bit quicker recovery, I'd say. But no matter how I do it, it's a really safe procedure in my hands.
That's good. I always like to ask, my doctors in these interviews, what's the one thing that sets you apart from your peers?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think I'm actually in a very fortunate position to be amongst a lot of highly skilled peers and colleagues around this area. What I like to do in my own practice is to, spend the extra minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, if it's 10 minutes, that's what it is, to really make sure patients have taken in all the information I've given them, because it's like drinking from a fire hose, frankly. When you come into my office, I'm giving you, I'm basically teaching you about what the problem is, what the treatments are, what your options are, and what do you want to do right then and there. And that's an overwhelming amount of information sometimes for people to digest. It takes time. Yep. And there'll be often times where I said, look, think about, you just heard all the information I gave you. Think about it. We don't need to do anything today. Think about it, come back. There's also opportunities for people to make decisions, and sometimes they say, what do you think I should do? Which I'm happy to, give them that option to sort of, pick my brain about it. But the reality is that I want people to feel comfortable knowing what the options are. You have to know, if you're looking at a map, you want to see where each road leads, and that's sort of my job, I feel like, is in my practice, I like to take that extra time, and I don't like to rush. And I think that probably, unfortunately, more and more is a rare commodity, unfortunately, in today's medicine.
Hence the show.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I got into this show anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me a little bit about, one of the passions you have is the Doctor-Patient Alliance. Something you created, something you saw that was needed for New Jersey to start. I mean, tell me a little bit about it.
So, a little over a year ago, this entity, this Doctor-Patient Alliance group, took off. It was an idea that I had that I realized there was lack of representation from a public relations, political perspective when it came to doctors and both doctors and patients. When it came to what our value was as doctors, what our rights were as patients, and how we've kind of gotten overwhelmed with all sorts of rules and regulations and corporatization of medicine. And more, and I think you feel it the same way that I do, is you're running around. I mean, ultimately we are running businesses. Yeah. And if rules continue to change that don't allow you or I to run a business, or it makes us have to run a business in a way that compromises our ability to deliver quality care the way we want to deliver it, it really, it's a big problem. And actually there was a recent article written by a hand surgeon colleague of mine up in Boston that has been making the rounds, and it talked about physician burnout. And it's not really the idea of burnout, but it's actually a moral injury. And the idea of behind that is that we can't provide the care that we know we should be giving. Instead, we have to cut our visits short. We have to sometimes make a quicker decision than we wanted to make. And if we don't push back against whether it's insurance companies, hospital systems, or other third parties who, basically put overhead burden on us, and we have to make ourselves run faster and faster. Right. There's no question that quality suffers. And then at the end of the day, we sit here with a moral dilemma. Do we do what we know is right and go out of business, or do we compromise that in some fashion and ultimately end up having to, make ends meet, keep our employees employed, but know that we could do a better job, but I can't afford to. Right. And understanding that dilemma has been the impetus for the group, and to really start to dissect into some of these issues, lobby and advocate on a political level for the right types of laws and legislation and regulation to be in place so that we can continue to, provide the services that we want to provide, and ultimately also be an advocate for patients and to be a sort of a clearinghouse of well-vetted quality information for patients. And that's actually what we're working on now, is really creating a really trusted source.
What I was going to say was, that's the biggest thing, is that you brought the patients into it, because what happens a lot of times is the patients and the doctors are on two different pages, and the insurance company's in the middle. So the insurance company might tell the patient, this is what you need to do, but it's not really the best care from the doctor's perspective. So by bringing the patients into the alliance, I really thought it was smart, because now you're going to inform the patient, and that's the biggest thing. I think that so many patients don't really understand how to navigate it all.
Right.
It's part of why I started
the
the
doctors
show.
don't.
Right.
Let alone a patient.
Right.
Who hopes not to ever be in this situation of being in the healthcare.
Right. I mean, and it is one of the reasons why I started this show, because to give that patient another look into a doctor that they wouldn't normally get somewhere else. Right. So when you were just explaining to me about how you set up the patient alliance with the doctors and the patients, I just thought, wow, that's filling that need for them, because they really don't have the knowledge they need to make educated decisions sometimes.
Right.
Or they'll just go with what their sister did or what their family member did and be like, okay, we're good, But there's so much more out there. So now, do you have events for this? Do you set up meetings? Like, how do people get involved with this?
Well, we do have a patient portal right now. We're actually populating it for a couple different things. Resources are going to be the first steps are going to be navigating the insurance marketplace. So we all have cards in our pockets. Hopefully we all have cards in our pocket.
Yeah.
If we're lucky.
Yeah.
But they have like little 3-letter words like PPO or EPO or POS or HMO, and helping people understand, what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of who can I see? What access does that give me? How much responsibility will fly back on me if I do go to see a doctor?
Sure.
And trying to help patients understand what their responsibilities would be given any given plan, maybe helping them choose which type of plan would be best for their family.
Right.
That's the information that the insurance companies don't want to be transparent about it. We haven't been good enough about educating our patients about it. And so we're going to do that with our group, is try to be as transparent as possible. Transparency is never a bad thing when it comes to the consumer. It's always lacking when it comes to the entities, the interest groups.
Right.
Because if you're going to offer me a bad plan but it's cheaper, I'm not going to tell you it's a bad plan. I'm just going to tell you it's a cheaper plan. You won't know it's a bad plan until you have a problem.
Yeah.
So helping people understand, well, okay, as long as you understand that you'll have limitations,
Sure.
if God forbid you needed a doctor, then you understand that. But it's that surprise when you end up realizing, wow, I'm not really, I'm underinsured.
Right.
And then unfortunately, more and more these days, there's these things called narrow networks where there's not a whole lot of doctors who actually accept the insurance plan that you have. And knowing that you have that or not is important. If you don't know that, then how are you going to decide to change it to something else? Yeah. And until God forbid you have a problem and you realize, geez, I'm out of luck. So
what would you suggest a patient do when they're shopping for their insurance plan? A guy or girl gets a new job. They offer them, the HR gives them 3 different insurance plans. Should they take a beat and not pick the plan right then and there and go home and talk to somebody or research something? Like, what would you suggest they do?
I mean, I think typically, they'll at least have some packet, right, with some grids and some options. One of the big things these days, well, first of all, I would recommend, first step would be to go to our website, www.drpatientalliance.org.
Okay.
On that site for patients will be a resource for patients to go and get that information. That's a nice overview of what to look for beyond what's in the grid and what's written for them.
Sure.
Because you want to be able to process the information from a couple of different sources, and if there's questions that come up, ask pertinent questions. One of the big issues that we've identified is that there's an issue. A hot topic is the idea of out of network. Doctors who don't participate in the network because they couldn't negotiate a fair rate with the insurance carrier, so they're not part of the network. Some plans do provide for out-of-network benefits, and ultimately, it's important to know what is that benefit out of network. Are they going to cover everything that the doctor charges you if they're not part of the network, or are you going to be on the hook because they're only going to pay, let's just say, like a Medicare rate, which Medicare is something that we all know that our parents may have, and, but that's kind of a floor price. That's something that we as doctors accept as a duty because we take care of our parents and our family and everything like that.
Right.
But that's because it's a lower rate. That can't apply to everyone because we wouldn't be able to stay in business. So we have to understand that, and that if you're out of network benefit only reimburses a doctor at Medicare rate, that could leave you with a balance bill that you weren't aware of.
Right.
And so we're trying to do our due diligence about educating patients on if they have a product, an insurance plan where they think they have an out-of-network benefit, but it's more of an illusory benefit where they aren't going to have their costs covered. That's important to know, and maybe you're better off paying less for a plan that doesn't have out-of-network benefits, or paying a little more for something with a better out-of-network benefit that will actually cover you out-of-network.
Yeah.
And it's a really esoteric and minutia detail, but it's super important because God forbid you ever needed that specialist who doesn't participate in the plan. This would be a big concern.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point, and making sure that, I think I'll include myself in this. I won't look through everything, and reading is like the most important thing. So if you give me a 10-page document on my insurance plan, right, how far am I going to get? Right?
Yeah.
If you go to Google, do you look past the first page, right? You don't.
No.
So, to go to your website where it's outlined easy, quick, you can maybe help people get to the parts in these plans that they could look at and say, oh, okay, so he wants me to look at, what my deductible will be if I take the in-network plan. What's my deductible if I take the out-of-network plan? Does this cover my kids for this, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And that's where you think, you've kind of figured out how you can help these patients.
I think you're absolutely right. Like you have a 10-page or even like a booklet, right? Here's your insurance packet. Here's your benefits.
Yeah.
You throw it behind your head and hope you never get ill. It's one of those things where God forbid you ever have a medical issue. Yeah. Now you're pouring through it, looking to find out if you actually have coverage. Yeah. It's like a contract, right? You don't use the contract in good times. You only look at the contract in the bad times and figure out where the issues lie.
Right.
So to that idea, what we'd like to try to do is distill down, and that's what we've done with the website, is to try to distill down the most important things, the top 2 or 3 things, or that you should be asking your human resources or benefits person when it comes to choosing your benefits, if you have those options. Hopefully you do.
Yeah. No, I think that's good, and we'll throw up the website on somewhere on this. We'll make sure it's up there for you for people to look at. Let's turn back to you. Let's go to. I want to ask you, tell me a little bit about your family life. Kids? Do you have any kids?
Yeah.
I know you're married.
I got married. We have a boy and a girl. They're 7, and my daughter just turned 6 yesterday.
Oh,
wow. They're great. They're going into elementary school.
You live in
I live in Wayne.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right, so your kids
are
local. Through that.
And so it's been great.
Any little doctors already?
We'll see. We'll see where medicine goes. I think it's important, for kids of anyone's kids to find what they're passionate about. Because when you can do something you're passionate about, it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
It's just, you just pour your heart into what you do.
Yeah.
It's not a punch in, punch out scenario.
Right.
And if you can kind of cultivate those interests over time at a young age, hopefully, and hopefully it's in a direction that will, foster a career, then I've done my job.
So I got a question for you. My kids are 1.5 and 3. Yours are 6 and 7. Do you see them like zero in and focus on something right now? Like have they sparked? Has anything sparked where you're like, huh, they're into that now?
Other than like poop. That's what they're into, right? They love that stuff.
That's good.
But
yes, other than poop.
Other than poop.
Yeah.
Well, because you can certainly get into that if you're interested in medicine.
Yeah, no.
But I think all kids have interests, right? And so, I think my son is always asking a lot of questions about different, science-related things. I think he gets that maybe from me.
So he likes the sciences.
He does. Although he has been pretty clear that he doesn't want to be a doctor. So we'll see what happens.
At 7, I think that'll change.
Yeah, we'll see. My daughter, although she's been pretty clear. She actually really likes. She wants to be like my wife. She's like, I want to be a gynecologist. She knows
awesome.
what it is. She knows what it is, and
if she's ready to go,
she's very interested.
At 7, you're like, I want to be a gynecologist. Good for you.
Yeah, so that's a thing. That's our household. What are you gonna do?
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that, it's funny too because their personalities are what they are from a very early age, and you just see them develop. But there's still that core personality that you see when they're first born, when they're looking out around the room and how they're doing it and how they're interacting. And and so it is a fun thing. My son wants to be a basketball player. That's actually really what he wants to be. So he's
his favorite team.
Celtics.
Oh yes,
come on,
course. Right. Yeah.
He's very into it. He actually when the Celtics they were they
did well, right?
They did pretty good last year. They had some injury issues with Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, and so when they lost to LeBron in the 7th game in the Eastern Conference Finals, my son, he ran up to his room and I could just hear him bawling his eyes out.
What jersey does he have?
Jason Tatum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Loves Tatum.
That's his player.
So,
speaking of other activities, other than medicine and doctor-patient alliance, what's your passion? What do you like to do?
Well,
any hobbies?
Yeah, one of the things that I love travel. I think it's seeing the world, seeing nature. I actually just was out in Utah at Zion National Park.
Zion.
You've been to Zion?
No, but I've seen
pictures.
Amazing. Friends of mine went there. Utah is something else.
Yeah. And I realized.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I think that's an underrated aspect. We always, I think everyone is used to just flying down to the Caribbean or going to the shore, but I think that's an underrated thing. Is some of the national parks that are out west and even around here. There's something about nature. In this day of cell phones and Wi-Fi, and it's so hard to get off grid and. There's something about not only being out of touch, but like in touch with nature at the same time, and finding and just sort of leveling yourself a little bit and taking yourself out of the hustle and bustle for a little bit. So that was really cool. We got an opportunity to do that a couple months ago.
I'll tell you. This segment of the show is called Stat Chat. Stat meaning right now, and chat meaning I'm going to ask you a series of questions pretty quick. So Matt, start the clock somewhere. You ready?
Let's do it.
And here we go. Favorite food?
Hormet sabzi.
My God. We'll look that up later, Matt.
That's from my mother-in-law.
Oh, okay. What's in it?
Parsley, greens, mushrooms, or we do it vegan with beans. You can put chunks of meat in it.
All right, we'll have to try that. Baseball or football? Gotta pick one.
I go baseball.
Baseball? All right, favorite team?
Boston Celtics.
Favorite football team?
New England Patriots.
Favorite Patriots player?
I gotta go Tom Brady.
Tom Brady. Okay. Greatest quarterback of all time?
Gotta go with Tom Burbage.
Classic rock or southern rock?
Classic rock.
Classic rock. Stones or Zeppelin?
Zeppelin.
Favorite movie?
Maybe we'll go with Big Lebowski.
I like that one. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
What's your dog's name?
We don't have a dog, but my mother-in-law does. His name's Leo.
Leo? Okay. And what kind of dog is that?
A Bichon Frise.
If you could talk to anyone, dead or alive, who would it be? Time's ticking.
Oh my goodness, these questions.
Come
Are you
on,
kidding
you
me?
can do it.
Pass.
Pass? Okay.
I'll come back to me on that one.
All right. If you weren't a doctor, you would be a...
Architect.
Architect. And last one, if you could talk to anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
Let's go with Albert Einstein.
Albert Einstein. And that's a wrap. All right, the last segment I have for you, Pete, is Before You Go. And this is when we ask a doctor to give us your opinion on the best little advice you can give these patients before they go to a doctor. So what do you think?
Well, I think there's a lot of different things that you should be thinking about, but most importantly, you should be trying to get as much information about why you came to the doctor and what you're asking, what your problem is as possible. The problem is you're thinking of a lot of different things, and you're trying to not only explain your problem, but then you're trying to learn about your problem. And so there's no possible way you can, in 10 or 15 minutes, get all the information you need. Oftentimes, I'm sure this is the case, and I try to repeat myself a lot in my office, but I'm sure there's things I don't repeat. And I think it's always helpful if you're a patient and you have a question, or you think you heard something, or you're not sure what you heard, or if you have a question that wasn't answered, to ask the question, either to repeat something or to clarify something. And we learn this to do the same thing with our patients, but if it isn't being done for you by your doctor, to put things back in your words to the doctor and have the doctor, clarify what your understanding might be, because that's ultimately what you get out of the doctor's visit is information, if nothing else. And so if you can't walk away with useful information about what you were there for, then the visit is a failure or it's incomplete. So you want to make sure that you get as much value out of that visit as possible.
Right.
It's your time, it's your money, and you need to make sure that information transmits.
Right. I know, like when I go, I have some anxiety, especially if it's something serious, and I'm listening to the doctor tell me what's going on,
right? And
I'm shaking my head yes, but I'm not really soaking up the information. So I get what you're saying. Make sure you ask the question again. If as a patient, if you don't know, you're not really picking up on the answer, maybe ask them to explain it in another way. Because I think some patients, including myself, we get a little intimidated because we don't want to say, hey, we don't really understand what you're saying. Right. Can you say it in another way? That's going to help me.
And I think more, oftentimes doctors they come in, they leave. You almost don't want to interrupt them, but that's your time as the patient.
Yeah.
So you have the right to ask the questions, clarify the questions that you may have, clarify the information that you think you heard.
Slow them down if you need.
Slow them down if you need to.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it'll prevent unnecessary follow-up visits because you'll totally understand what happened the first time, and you'll be totally on board with what the next steps are going to be. I like to, in my office, I like to write or draw pictures of things, structures, like, whether it's trigger finger, carpal tunnel, fracture, different things, so that people visual. Yeah, some people do better visually. Sure. I know I do.
Yeah.
So hopefully that helps. But if that's not being done for you, ask the question, repeat, or don't be afraid to ask someone to repeat, a doctor to repeat what they said.
All right. Pete, Dr. DeNoble, I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
My pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Nick.
From my time spent with Dr. DeNoble, it seems he has the patient's best interest at heart. From courting his wife during medical school to creating the Doctor-Patient Alliance, he's always thinking about better ways to inform them. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go to Google and try to find out what he really likes as his favorite food.
As always, please do your homework when choosing a doctor. These interviews should be just one of the many things you watch and read before making your final decision on who you pick to be your doctor.